I usually speak in Australia, I have people coming up to me saying, "Where's your accent from?" It's really weird. But I understand that speaking to a few of you over the last day or so that you think I've got a very Australian accent. So that should be, I can't fit in anywhere anymore, can I? Okay. So two things about your introduction, Lisa. One, the first thing is that the presentation was probably good in New York because Michael was part of it. So you've just got me today, so I'm sorry about that. He's back in Canberra freezing to death. Working hard while I'm holidaying over here with you guys. So the meeting in New York, that's the second thing, was fantastic, and particularly the drinks at the plaza. That was very nice. And what's continued to be a theme from that, I think, is actually understanding that other people are doing a similar thing to what we're trying to chip away at in Australia, and hearing all of your wonderful stories over the last couple of days. It just motivates you, it inspires you to keep going, because sometimes, as you all know, the going can get really, really tough. So it's been really great. So I hope that this presentation can actually share some of our learnings with you over the last about 15 years. So you can take away something, because I've taken a whole heap away from you guys. So thanks for the invitation. Okay, so I just did the title a bit because I thought that actually when I sort of dig deep and ask five whys about what we're trying to do, the longest lever to improving anything that we're doing in organisations is actually having our kids leaving school with the ability to think the way that you guys now have all been learning how to think, and with the strategies and methods to go on into their futures and apply what they've learned in their jobs, in their future careers. So it's basically about trying to put you guys out of business. So that's the job we're in. The other piece I'll just mention is what we've learned about this approach, Deming's approach, and the strategies and methods that come with it over the last 15 years is that they basically are, it's not only a way that describes what needs to be happening if you're improving, but the methods provide the how-to. So I don't know what it's like in the UK, but there's a stack of models out there about organisational improvement and what it needs to look like. What isn't very common is a way of actually going about making it look like that. So the how-to is really missing. So it's a great strength of Deming's approach and all of the tools and strategies that have grown up with it, that it puts into everyone's hands, no matter who we are in an organisation, puts into our hands the how-to. So, the purpose, because we always start with that, as you know, true to Deming's theory, that we start with purpose, and our purpose today is to actually just share with you our experience of applying this to school education. And going to get some of the kids talking in a minute, because I'm all tongue-tied already. So I'm going to share with you quite a few video clips so you can see the kids using it firsthand rather than Jane rabbiting on for too long. So, process, and we know process is important as well. Intro, a bit of an intro. Why on earth would we focus in on schools apart from to do the facilitators out of the job? And what we've learned about applying Deming's theory to this particular area. And then the so what. So what's actually happened? Has it improved things, or are we just, wasting our time? Okay, so a bit of an intro, a bit of background. In Australia, we've got 10,000 schools, about 3.5 million students. Unlike Britain and the US, who have about 10% of their students going to private schools, we've actually got about 35% of our students going to private or independent schools. That's partly, or mainly, due to the perception that you'll get a better education through the private sector. So there's this, continuing mass exodus of parents working 2 jobs and doing all sorts to try and get their kids into the private system. So we've been working with schools, Michael and I, since about 1996, with educators and administrators, so principals, headmasters, training them, working a little bit with the kids, and it's work with the kids that we really like. But our main clients are the teachers and the administrators, so they can take back into their schools the thinking and the methods. We started work with the Australian Quality Council, both Michael and I, working with other industries. So I was from local government, trained as a scientist, working in hospitals and local government for a while. Michael's an engineer by trade, so neither of us are teachers. But we started work with the AQC, and the AQC at that time was the peak body in Australia, applying Deming's theory, and sort of, you know, their main focus was improving industry and government by applying the theory. So the AQC decided that the longest lever to improving things in industry and government was through students. So off we trotted to the Victorian Department of Education and said, how about we work with a group of schools, unpack everything that we've learned about improving organisations with the schools and see what we can make of this, see how we can make it work. We thought it would work pretty well in management and administration, but had no idea what it might look like in the classroom, and no idea of the profound effect. It's obvious now, but when we walked into that meeting, had no idea of the profound effect it would actually have on learning and improving learning in the classroom. So the Department of Education said, yep, here you go, here's 28 schools, do a pilot. So we spent 2 years working with them, unpacking all of the business jargon, and they said, look, you've got to translate all this stuff, we can't understand what you're talking about. Customers, what are they? Suppliers, what? So we spent 2 years unpacking all of the language. At the end of the 2 years, they said, actually, we don't want it unpacked, we want it how you came in, because then we can actually talk to other organisations outside of education about improvement. There's a language of improvement, and we want to, you know, share that language and be able to talk to others about how we're going. So that was how the whole thing started, and we worked with a few groups of schools in Victoria and South Australia. And then the AQC was taken over by Standards Australia, who's our body that writes all the standards, you know, like for seat belts and baby seats and crash helmets and all that sort of thing. And they had a very different way of working. And we were sort of really keen on us applying in our own organisation what we were encouraging other organisations to use. And that wasn't happening, so we decided to walk away and set up QLA. So that was in 2003, and so we've been doing that ever since and enjoying it very, very, very much. So just a little bit about the state of the education system and why it might be worth thinking about spending time improving it. We've got pretty good data in Australia, so we rank in about the top 10 countries in the world in terms of learning outcome data, and we do take part in international testing. But we've got a really long tail of underperformance, and a lot of our Indigenous students do not fare well in our current system of education. That's actually worsening, and as time is going on, we're slipping down the ranks, and particularly when we look at the performance of our Asia-Pacific neighbours. So the Asian countries in particular are doing outstandingly well in education, and their students are doing much, much better. The UK and the US are a bit further down from Australia on the ranks, so your system might need a bit of a look at as well. 75% of our students stay in school, 25%, a quarter of them just can't survive the system. It's that horrible by the time they get to the age where they can get out of it, they get out of it. Our parents aren't happy either. About a quarter of them are really dissatisfied with what goes on, and hence that exodus that I talked about before into the private sector. High teacher stress, got lots of money being spent on stress compensation. We can't attract anyone into the profession, so they've had to reduce the levels of, I don't know what you call it here, the O levels and A levels and all that sort of thing still. We've had to drastically reduce the standards that we're accepting into our universities to train teachers. And they're not happy either. Not enjoying what they're doing at all. And then, if we ask the kids, which we have been doing and encouraging teachers and principals to do, we find out that about 50%, half of them, are actually bored stiff at school, so not having a good time of it. And a third of them are really finding it tough. And we know that there's a really good correlation that if we're not having a good time of it, chances are we're not learning particularly well either. So the data would suggest that we're not doing too well. And despite injecting lots and lots of money into the system over the last decade, so we've increased spending in education by 43%. We still don't spend as much as some other countries, but we've been pouring lots more into it. We're flatlining. So over the last decade, nothing has improved, no matter what indicators we look at. So lots of money going in, and we're not improving. I think everyone knows who this bloke is. So, Dr. Deming. So I was first introduced to his work back when I was working in local government, and what particularly attracted me to his work was the joy it resulted in for the everyday workers. So it put back into your hands having a say in how the work's done, and I saw firsthand in local government the difference that made to, it brought joy back to work. So that was what really attracted me. And when I got a chance to work with schools and to see how it could bring back joy in learning, that was the real trap. So Deming told us that if we're just going along with the best of intentions, that's not going to help. We need to be guided by some good knowledge, and it just so happens he had a whole system of the profound knowledge that we can tap into. He said that there are 4 key things that we need to be doing to improve what we do in any organisation. So whether we're working in a Year 1, Grade 1 classroom, or whether we're working in a wonderful housing association, if we focus on these 4 things, chances are we're going to achieve some really good sustainable improvement. And you're all familiar with Deming's 4 areas. I don't need to go into great detail with that, yeah? We translated Deming's theory, so trying to make it more accessible to teachers and principals, into a set of principles or key statements that describe the 4 areas. So I'll just let you have a quick read of those. So is there anything that looks really foreign to you guys in there? It's all pretty much, and this is the piece, you know, that we saw such great alignment with the work that UIMPROVE do, that UIC are doing. So, yeah, it's just the same. The same stuff. We're trying to do the same things, bring it about in whatever aspect of work we're doing. The piece that has come to light more recently, and particularly with education and learning, is that it aligns wonderfully well with our now understanding of how the brain works and how we learn. So it's as if Deming had a crystal ball, or some way of knowing how we are wired up here to actually want to work together to make things better, to need purpose and meaning, to be involved, intrinsically motivated, to feel in control of what we're doing, and to work together as the social animals we are. So, yeah, the brain research now is actually reinforcing that to a very high degree. What does it look like in the classroom? This is a wonderful model created by a good colleague of ours from the US, David Langford, and we've modified it just a bit for our purposes. But basically it transforms what the teacher-student relationship looks like in the classroom. So when we cast our minds back to our days in school, the teacher was seen as the font of all knowledge, and it was very much a system guided by fear or, you know, lots of extrinsic motivators, carrots and sticks. Teacher, the font of all knowledge, doing tours or sitting in rows, filling the empty vessel that was our heads with this knowledge. So when we start to apply Deming's theory to the classroom, we actually are tapping into intrinsic motivation and increasing student responsibility for their learning through equipping them with the strategies that they need to be responsible. If you replace teacher and student with leader and follower, would suggest that this is a model that very much applies to your organisations. So how we're empowering everyone to be able to take more responsibility, to take ownership, and that increases joy and performance as well. So the quality of learning improves, the quality of performance improves. Okay, well what I'd like to do now is just quickly show you how those 4 areas translate into a classroom setting. We'll start with the systems piece and what Deming called appreciation for a system. And one of the beautiful strategies that we've introduced to schools is based on the SIPOC model. Are you all familiar with the supplier input, process output, customer model? Maybe not. No? Okay, well another one of Deming's really useful ways of thinking. Basically, on one page, we can create a mutual agreement in our organisation of what we're there to do. So you'll see that inside that square boundary there, which is inside the organisation, we've agreed a purpose, a vision of excellence for our organisation. We've got values and behaviours that guide everyday behaviour. We've got a set of stakeholders that live both inside and outside the system, so we can understand who we need to manage relationships with. We've understood what the processes are that deliver the outcomes for the clients that we're serving. And we're measuring success. We've got our results measures defined. And our priorities or strategies. So the critical success factors. What are the critical few things we must get right to thrive and survive? And the 4 strategies that the Regenda ladies talked about, that's how we view that piece, where that piece fits into the system map. But then on one page, we've basically got our shared agreement for how we're working together, what we're working to achieve. So what does that look like in the classroom setting? My lovely assistant's going to... so this is a primary school...
First did a systems diagram as adults at my previous school in, I think the year 2000 or something like that. And we found it really difficult. But at the end of it, we gained a really good insight of the fact that it's not just us being isolated in our classrooms teaching. There are so many other factors and people that need to be considered, and relationships and, all of those sorts of things. So at around that time, I thought that's a really important thing for kids to know, because they need to see where what they're doing every day fits into the greater good, into the school or into the community. And that's why we always do a class systems diagram.
We have our learning machine so we can concentrate and learn lots of things, and we have our values. The values pour into our learning machine. The values are be happy and healthy, so we must always have a smile on our face every day at school, and we should be fit and exercised and healthy. We have our code of cooperation, and it's got lots of things that we have to do. We play it every single morning. Our processes are the 3 steps: reading groups, writing, maths, practicing, stress it, class meeting, and using the computer.
Basically, the learning machine is a way for kids to see how their footprint, I suppose, impacts on the whole class, on the whole school, and on their learning themselves.
This is our suitcase for when we were in kindy, prep and grade 1s, and we didn't know much in there, and then it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, and when we go to grade 3 we'll have a really, really, really big suitcase, and that'll have all our learning, and we'll take it home and we'll learn even more, and we'll take it to grade 3 and we'll be really, really smart.
Thinking made easy in a year 2 classroom. So getting clear about purpose with students, about why they're at school, about what a particular aspect of their learning is all about, attaches that relevance and meaning that we now know our brains need to be able to connect with the task of learning. So there's another example where a classroom have worked together to identify their mission, their purpose. I think the last group also talked about, the Regenda group, about getting clear about the quality characteristics. So what it would look like to do a superb job of whatever we're doing. Here's a Year 1 classroom who have labelled their top quality work 5-star. So they've decided the characteristics that will make their work 5-star. Can you all see that? So my pictures have at least 5 colours. I've included a different coloured handwriting and I can't even read that myself, and date. I've done my very best. I've shown persistence and finished, and I've checked my work and followed the instructions. So very clear and simple for the students to identify what a really good job of learning looks like. So they can do a self-assessment. They've actually had input to that. So they've had a voice in creating what those quality characteristics are. If they miss any, that's where the teacher comes in. But we're building ownership of the learning, and they can see now what good work looks like. So I've got a far better chance of making my work look like that if I know how we're going to measure it. Okay, so I heard some people saying they have real trouble with deployment flowcharting. Is that right? Okay, well, maybe we should get a little 5-year-old to explain.
And my favourite is a spelling flowchart because it helps me to remember what to do next and helps me choose new words. Well, if you want to, you can put students, teacher and mums and dads to help you. And those circles means they can help you. That one means the teacher can help you. And that one means the mums and dads can help you. And you have to read those parts to do it.
So you guys shouldn't have any difficulty at all. So getting the routines really clear in the classroom, having the students design the processes so the teacher isn't having to tell them every day how to do something, how the classroom runs, building ownership of the classroom. So it's our learning system, not just the teacher doing stuff to us. We've then got our processes documented so we can reflect on them and continually improve them. There's a lovely example of a flowchart of how we spell, how we go about spelling. Lots of examples of those on our website for those of you who are more interested. So let's have a look next at the data piece, because that seems to be a piece that we all have difficulty as well. Oh, sorry, no, we'll go into the knowledge part. I'm shooting ahead of myself, sorry guys. So PDSA, another area that quite a lot of schools have difficulty with. I don't know about you guys in your organisation, but we tend to be all right at planning. We'll do a lot of stuff, but the reflecting on what we've done and actually has it actually improved anything or just changed things is not something that we're particularly good at, and I don't know whether that's the same. That's the same for you. We tend to sort of speed through the planning piece as well and dive to solution. So looking at root causes, looking at what the data's telling us is not a common feature of good planning. So, yeah, this is an area where we've noticed, there's lots of improvement needed. But again, the kids don't seem to have any problem with getting stuck into it. So let's have a look at another child, another 5-year-old, explaining PDSA and how to use it.
This is called a web diagram, and up in the corner says plan. And I wrote Dad's house, new footy, new car, and PlayStation. And then you go on to do, and then I wrote about these words that I put up. I read it again, and then I saw if it made sense, and then I looked at it, and then I went to study, and I went, and I went capitals, yes, full stops, yes, spaces, yes, and straight lines, no, and words I know, yes. And I wrote, on the weekend I went to my dad's house and he got a new football. Then we looked for cars. We went home and I played PlayStation. And act is the good copy, because all I had to fix up is straight lines, and I fixed them up.
There you go. Jordan doesn't have any trouble with PDSA. Okay, so now the data piece. So understanding variation, understanding and using data to inform our improvement efforts is one of the pieces that we found particularly challenging, and what I've heard sort of from the last day or so is it's an area that you don't find particularly easy either. I know it was one of the big areas for me to try and get my head around. And I, like many others, had taken a vow of statistical abstinence. I don't know how I got through uni with it. But kids, again, don't seem to have any trouble. So this is a Year 6 class, so these students are about 11 years old, and they're plotting data to monitor how well they're getting organised in the morning, or they're using run charts, histograms to track their learning progress, see how their system of learning is improving. They don't seem to have very much trouble with that at all. Haven't got a clip on that one, but it comes easy to them. When they haven't accumulated all the baggage that we tend to around numbers not being our friends, yeah, they find it easy. Okay, and finally, the bit about people, Deming's psychology, the area that he called psychology, and continually working to remove the barriers, what gets in our way of actually doing a good job, and focusing on tapping into the intrinsic motivation that is naturally a part of our makeup, whether it's about learning, whether it's about doing a good job. It's naturally there in the vast majority of us. There's just stuff that gets in the way. The systems and processes in place in our organisations get in the way of our doing that. So our job as leaders or as teachers is to keep asking, identifying with our students, with our followers, what are the barriers that are preventing you from doing a really good job. So one of the tools that we found particularly helpful in this area is a tool called a capacity matrix. And what that allows us to do is to remove barriers to learning by actually putting the curriculum into the hands of the student. So in the past, the curriculum's always been something that teachers had in their head or in their drawer or on the shelf. And what is to be learned has never been, the kids have never been privy to that. So a capacity matrix is just a matrix that lists the capacities that the student is going to be working on developing. And they can use that matrix to firstly understand what they're going to learn, and then, because of the makeup of the capacity matrix, they can actually track their learning progress. They can see success, they can see their learning. That is hugely intrinsically motivating. So they, over time can see how they're progressing. It makes them want to learn more. Nobody has to, reward us with gold stars or lollies or whatever to learn how to walk or to talk. Learning's an innate part of what we do. So we need to keep working in the classroom to find out what's getting in the way of that learning process. So the last clip I've got to share with you is one of the students explaining, a lot better than I can, how to use a capacity matrix to improve your learning.
Hello, I'm Renee, and this is a capacity matrix letter writing for the school holidays. Over here are paragraphs and the features that we need in our letter. The way we thought of that is our grade brainstormed all the things that they thought would go into a letter. On my graph over here, you colour in what you think you're up to, like over here, structure of a letter, under that section, address of writer in top hand corner. If you didn't have that, you would colour in beginning, meaning that you need to improve on that. If you did, but you don't always use it, you would colour in consolidating. Consolidating means that you use it oftenly but not all the time. If you always use it all the time and have the address in the top right-hand corner, you would colour established, and that goes for the rest of the paragraphs as well. On my one, under purpose of the letter, we've got telling thoughts, experiences and ideas about the holiday. I've coloured mine under consolidating because I don't think I do that all the time in my writing. Opening greeting, either formal dear or less formal hi. I coloured established because I think I always do an opening greeting to them like dear or to, but that's more of a formal one. Here it says, letter is written in a text type that shows the reader knows the writer well. The reason I coloured that is the only one I coloured in beginning was because that text type is saying, oh, you know that park we used to go to, or you know my nan and pop. But I coloured under beginning because in the letter I wrote, I didn't have that information. So I think next time maybe I should put in that information, try and improve it, probably get to consolidating or maybe even established if I do that all the time. It's helped me with the writing because now I know what I need to improve on. If I didn't have a capacity matrices, I wouldn't be improving my work very well, and I probably wouldn't even get 5 or 4-star ratings on my work.
So the capacity matrix is a really powerful tool, and we've been using that, adapting it to teacher standards as well. So it is a tool that you can use in your organisations. What capacities do we need to develop for a particular role? So you can do a needs analysis, and the evidence column that you saw on the right there is where the person, the learner, needs to produce the evidence to substantiate that they are at that level of learning. So it's not about just sort of shading it in anywhere, but works wonderfully well in the workplace as well. So things we've learned in the education system, we're now being able to feed it back into the other way, into business and industry. So just to close off, I thought I'd just show you some of the data that we have that actually show that this is making the difference that we want it to and affecting improvement. This is some data from a really impressive district in the States that Michael and I were fortunate enough to be able to visit just after the New York conference. And we filmed a video there that we've just finalised now. They have been true to applying Deming's philosophy and methods for 2 decades. So they have 33 schools. They've got quite a few thousand students, about 22,000 students, and they have stuck with it. They've retained that constancy of focus, constancy of purpose for 20 years. They're a rarity because, unlike other organisations, schools are flip-flopping, fad surfing, what's the latest flavour of the month. They've stuck with it, and you can see that no matter what data we were to explore in our visit, the data's all showing that sort of trend, that continual improvement over 20 years. We haven't quite got as much data experience under our belt or a district that we've had the luxury of sticking with it for that long yet. But we've got some that's showing the impact that it's having. This was a survey that we did in 2005, and schools that were definitely saying that student responsibility for learning was increasing. So that matrices, being able to flowchart processes in the classroom, agreeing purpose, quality criteria, all of the things that you've seen build capacity to take responsibility. A study that we also did starting in 2009 showed that things were on the way up. So not really enough data there to be outstandingly statistically relevant, but on the up and up. And there's a lot of anecdotal evidence there to suggest that that's the case too. One of the outstanding pieces of evidence that we collected that did show great statistical significance was around the increasing staff satisfaction. So organisations, schools that had applied this and stuck with it, the joy in teaching was returning. So the satisfaction of working in those organisations, in those schools, was definitely improving and much improved. Okay, well, I've taken you over time, I think, but I'd just like to say thank you again for listening, for inviting me to come along and share with you. Happy to talk some more. Our website has lots of information on it, lots of free stuff to download if you think that you can use some of the ideas in what you're doing. So please help yourself to that. And look forward to perhaps being able to continue conversations, and particularly with the guys from UIC. We're really enjoying our connection with you in those conversations in various parts of the world. It's really good fun. So thank you very much.